guys, it's HINA here at Rebalance Physical Therapy in Center City, Philadelphia, as well as on the main line in Narberth, Pennsylvania. And today I want to talk to you all about what trigger points are, how they usually present, what it can do to the body, and what can be done about it in terms of treatment. So, when someone tells you what a trigger, or basically tells you that you have a trigger point, or you, again, may have gone on Google and looked at what could be causing your symptoms and something comes up with a trigger point, well, what exactly is it? So a trigger point can be, it's basically, in a nutshell, a spasmed part of a muscle, usually within a bigger part of a muscle, that can create pain either on touch, or it can create pain referred outside of the location where the trigger point is. So basically, if you take a look at musculature, okay, you basically have muscles. I'm pulling up my picture here. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this muscle right here. This is called the upper trapezius muscle, which is a common muscle that is located right here, and most people have trigger points located in those muscles. So if you reach around, to your upper trapezius or your neck, this lower neck area, and you kind of push around in there, you'll usually find a knot. And when you find that knot, it's going to be kind of tender to the touch. It can create pain locally, or if you press that, you might feel like, oh, that feels like it's going up towards my head. It might be going down towards my arm, or even in the back of the shoulder blade. And so that is what's known as a trigger point. So if we look at this here, okay, that's the same area, it's the upper trap, and say your knot is located here. If we kind of zoom in on that area, this is what this circle is. So you have lots of these muscular fibers, okay, because a muscle is made up of many muscle fibers. I want you to think of them as like strands of silk, okay, that kind of move on top of each other and they glide. And when they're healthy, they have this nice gliding that occurs to contract a muscle and to lengthen a muscle, okay? Now, sometimes, and most often, you can get a trigger point inside this group of muscles. So basically, those areas of, again, if you think of them as silk strands, can clump together and spasm together, which is indicated by this little red area and this oval with the line, the darker red areas, as a trigger point. And then when that develops, you basically have this tight squeezed area within that muscle that doesn't have good blood flow. And when a muscle doesn't have good blood flow, which is what it relies on for nutrition to bring it all that good stuff, oxygenated blood, if it doesn't get there, then this area can become irritated and basically can cause pain in the local area when you touch it. Or if it's bad enough and it's considered an active trigger point, you can actually have pain that can actually move outside of this area, and in particular for an upper trapezius trigger point, you can have pain that can radiate up into the head, maybe give you headache and tension headaches. It can give you symptoms that might go down into the shoulder blade. And so that is basically what a trigger point is. And a trigger point can exist in all muscles in the body. And there's certain muscles that are more vulnerable to trigger points developing, and there's certain muscles that are less. But in general, all the muscles in the body can develop trigger points that can be an exquisite source of pain, to the point where sometimes it might feel like it's actually coming from an organ when it's not. And we see this actually quite a bit in our clinic, because even certain areas that are around, like the abdomen, especially around the abdomen, as well as the glute muscles, the muscles that attach onto the tailbone, even another group of muscles called your pelvic floor, which is the muscles that are inside of the pelvis that you can't see from the outside, can develop trigger points. And they can actually, when they get active enough, can make it feel like your bladder is in pain, might feel like your uterus is in pain, might feel like your rectum is painful, your tailbone is in pain. And so you might think that it's coming from an organ, but it actually isn't. It's actually the muscle. So now, just to show you an example, and this is from the book Simon and Travell, who were basically the physicians that have extensively written about trigger points, okay? when someone develops a trigger point, and again, I mentioned the abdomen can be a big source of pain, you can develop muscle spasmed areas of trigger points within the abdominal muscles. And when that happens, sometimes I've had people say, oh, I feel like my chest hurts. Or it feels like I'm having difficulty breathing sometimes, because a trigger point here where the X is can give you pain in this dark red area, as well as all these little dots that refer out to the side. Here is a lower abdominal trigger point that can give you pain that feels like it's in the groin and even into the genital area. And then it can also manifest up into, again, the rib cage area. You can have other trigger points that maybe here, okay, into, may start up here behind your shoulder blade, and it makes it feel like you have pain in the back of the arm or into the shoulder or into the chest, okay? Other trigger points that can give you headache type symptoms or even neck pain. So again, here, you can have trigger points located into the neck that can give you frontal headaches, side temporal headaches, into the eye socket, and also, down and through even the lower ear or TMJ area. And then you can have other trigger points that may start in the gluteal area and make it feel like you have sciatic type symptoms, low back symptoms, tailbone symptoms, and even into your glutes. And then again, I had also mentioned how sometimes you can have trigger points in another group of muscles called your pelvic floor. And if I have a picture here, I can show you. Right here, you can have trigger points that exist in these muscles called your pelvic floor, and that can actually make it feel like you have pain that's in your reproductive organs, such as your uterus, your ovary, bladder type symptoms, and even making you feel like you have to frequently go to the bathroom, and even rectal pain, which most people think it's hemorrhoids, but it's actually not. So that's what a trigger point can do. That's typically how it manifests, and it can be, usually it's like achy, throbbing, gnawing in nature. It might just feel tight, like you're constantly restricted, or you have a vice-like symptom. But literally it can be all across the board. Some people get nauseous when they have trigger points. Vomiting sometimes can occur. So you can definitely have a whole slew of symptoms that trigger points can kind of give you, which makes it feel that it's sometimes, for some people, feels like, oh, is this life-threatening? Could it be something that's, more systemic? But it's actually not. It's coming from the muscles. So if you've gone to all of your, typical healthcare providers and physicians and specialists, and they're not finding anything, then chances are it could be coming from a muscular trigger point, which you definitely want to see someone who specializes in knowing what they are and how to improve them, along with how to treat the body as a whole systemically in terms of alignment, okay, making sure other muscles aren't imbalanced, and to get all the muscles kind of working in synchronistically with each other like a beautiful symphony that's working together. Now, how do you treat trigger points? So at our clinic, we're physical therapists. There are many physical therapists that understand what trigger points are. There are many physical therapists that don't, and they don't know how to treat them. But you definitely want to see a physical therapist that understands what they are. They have many different ways of knowing how to deactivate them, and also that know how to work with the body holistically, not just to treat the trigger point itself, but also to understand why they're developing. Because usually trigger points don't typically just appear. It usually comes in conjunction because that particular muscle that the trigger point has developed in is due to an imbalance of other muscles that aren't working together with that area where the trigger point has developed. And tendency is it's usually that muscle has been overworking for some time, and then it decides to spasm and develop trigger points. And in the body, you can have trigger points in multiple different muscles at the same time, and that can lead to a lot of different symptoms that sometimes feel like they shift. So sometimes the pain might be in one area, but then it changes to another. And that is typically, oftentimes what we hear is sometimes it seems like the pain is moving or it's shifting around. So the way to deactivate trigger points, there's a number of different techniques that body workers and physical therapists can use. There's a lot of different pressure techniques where you can hold and press on the muscle, which can deactivate the trigger point. There's things called strumming, which are basically rubbing over that area in anticipation to improve blood flow and to release the spasming. There's an old technique called spray and stretch, which I don't know many people that use that anymore because there's so many other hands-on techniques that work really, really well. You can use tools to deactivate the muscle. There's also something called cold laser, which many practitioners can use in conjunction with hands-on techniques, and sometimes we do this in our clinic, but in our clinic we usually find that the hands-on techniques work the best. And then there's also ways that you can actually work on a particular joint that sometimes can deactivate a trigger point as well. And these are just a few of the techniques of the many slew of techniques that can be used, but these are some of the ones that we typically use in our clinic outside of the spray and stretch. So I hope that at least gives you an idea of what they are, you know, the symptoms that it can manifest, if you think you may have one, and who to contact and where to search if you feel like you need some of this work done to release trigger points. Now, if you live in and around the Philadelphia area, then no brainer, this is what we work on day in and day out to improve balancing and biomechanics and function of the body. We're Rebalance Physical Therapy. Come to our website. We have lots of other YouTube videos that might be helpful in understanding how trigger points work in conjunction with other either diagnoses that you might have. Sorry, I don't even know if that's a word, but yes, diagnoses or C's that you might have, as well as, you know, other symptoms that they can, more particular symptoms that they can manifest depending on the other YouTube videos that we have. So again, it's rebalancept.com. I hope this was helpful to you and have a wonderful day.